set?
We're set.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much. This is our last installment for 2017. Can you believe this word? November's ending. November's ending, and that's the end of 2017. We go away. Ужас. But here we are. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that this is possibly the worst time in the semester. How do we know this? Trips, classes, and everything. I'm Tom Garza. I'm the director of the Texas Language Center. I'm also a faculty member in Slavic and Eurasian Studies and the interim director of the Arabic Flagship. I am so pleased to be having these last many years working with the Flagship. Welcome. With the Flagship and with the Texas Language Center to be able to mainly work with so many of you on various projects, on various collaborations that have just been, that remind me how great we actually do our jobs here and outside of UT, bringing UT expertise in and out. The last year I've been doing a lot of this topic around the country actually, and realized I had, in talking to Betsy, had actually brought it back home. It's a topic that almost seems like sort of preaching to the choir here. We all probably would like to think we're doing everything that I'm going to talk about today, and yet every time I've given this, I get lots and lots of nods at each step of the way, and then at the end saying, well, and so you all are doing this, right, in your classes? No, actually we're just nodding because it's polite, apparently. So what I want to look at in this rather coy title, Designing Backward Moving Forward, using reverse design, and how they affect foreign language curricula, is a relatively straightforward, simple-sounding conceptual framework for building our curricula. Start with what we know are the outcomes of our courses, and build our curricula backwards in a way that will ultimately fulfill those courses. It seems so straightforward, and yet, as I said, we rarely do it. And to me, a lot of that comes with defining the terms behind some of these things that we think we know, and we use them all the time, these terms, as though they are calcs from another language that we just borrowed in and said, oh yes, of course, reverse design, yes, that's what we do at the University of Texas in our classes. We do reverse design backward, reversally in reverse designing backwards. We do that, right? What exactly is going on in this idea of moving backwards to go forward? What actually is at the root of the idea of reverse is two simple notions. Going backwards is the easy part. It's from where do we begin the backward motion, and to where are we, what are we backing into, in a sense. And so there are some interesting outcomes here that I want to pop up real quick of what is involved in a backward course design. So, as I said, we start with the end. That's the backwards part. But the point of departure, as it were, are the outcomes of our courses. So are these, as so many of our courses now have, proficiency outcomes. We'd like our students to get to an intermediate mid by the end of a one-year intensive course. Or in the case of the Flagship, in the case of the Flagship, we'd like our students at the end of the entire program to be at either advanced high or even superior, threshold superior, if not in Arabic. So these are the one type of outcomes. Are they the only ones? No. And so I want to talk a little bit about what types of outcomes we're really actually lucky, almost an embarrassment of riches in our field, is that we, as a field, foreign language education, second language acquisition, have a lot of standards. We apparently, a lot of us like to do work that produces different kinds of standards and outcomes. So we start with the outcomes, whatever they may be. I want my students to get A's. I want my students to be able to do X, Y, Z. I want my students to be at such a proficiency level, whatever they are. Then we apply goal-oriented standards to reach those outcomes. And we design the curriculum then based around those things. Sounds so simple, so simple. Let's give it a shot. Let's see if it's as easy as it sounds. So if we start with the idea that, yes, indeed, come on in, please, come on in. We start with the idea that, as I said, we have so many types of outcomes at our disposal. I'll start with kind of the granddaddy of them all, or grandmother of them all, I suppose, the Afro Proficiency guidelines. So many of our courses, programs, and so forth use these guidelines not for assessment tools and certainly as a way to inform They don't actually give any direction for a curriculum, but they do inform what kinds of activities we might do. If you don't know these or haven't visited them recently, by the way, let's see if this is going to work. I just have to now change the 2 seconds here. There we go. I have to exit my PowerPoint for just a sec. There we go. And we're back. Yes. The actual proficiency guidelines. Why can't I get this to come on? There we go. There we go. Okay. If you haven't been to their website recently, it's completely different now in a good way. Since about 2016, largely this has to do with the coming of the national standards, which I'll talk about in a minute, but the guidelines in the most recent iteration are still the 2012 edition, although a new edition is being worked on right now that in fact is starting to talk also about culture standards to be worked in as well. We get our usual cone of proficiency, we get a lot of definition of what are the guidelines and so forth, but the parts that I really like are you can pick your language out here, and so I'm going to very quickly, of course, start with, it's somewhere here, I used to have, of course, the generic ESL. There it is. Start with an ESL one, just for fun, since we've got so many great languages in the room, and I'll go to speaking. You can pick any of your language if it exists out here, so as you can see, Arabic, Chinese, even Azeri is there, obviously Russian is here, I'm knowing some of the languages we've got in the room, French is here as well. Click on it, and you'll not only get the descriptors that have to do with your language in particular, but you also can actually go and hear a sample interview being done. This, that's the distinguished level. Let me go a little bit, get a little bit more. There we go. Let's go to intermediate. Get a sample of intermediate. Just very quickly, look at a tiny bit of this, just for fun here.
And so tell me, what do you do in Yonkers? What's a daily, a typical day like for you?
I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I prepare my kids to be ready to go to school. And when they went to school, I go to school for adults to learn English every day, Monday through Friday.
So you get the idea of how this is. These are short, they're about, none of them are more than 10 minutes long. They tend to be somewhere between 5 and 7 actually, for the most part. They're short pieces that will give you a chance, if you're not so proficient in the proficiency guidelines, to hear or see in terms of if they're writing, or look at types of text for reading and so forth. What would be a text that, a level of proficiency that would be intermediate mid, let's say, or speaking that would be intermediate mid. So again, it's an interesting way of, now this website not only gives information that's about the actual guidelines, but actually helps you get educated about how the guidelines work. Coming back. Here we go. So, actual guidelines as one, and as one set of standards. And as I mentioned, I know a lot at the University of Texas, a lot of our programs use the guidelines as the marker, especially after, say, a one-year intensive sequence that we usually say intermediate mid, speaking, intermediate mid for reading, intermediate high for listening, and so forth, is that we have these descriptors here. So start with that in mind. What else do we have? The Afro can-do statements. Now these, I always say, take these always with a grain or two of linguistic salt. They're very useful, I think, for especially novice instructors who truly are still getting their feet wet in using the proficiency guidelines. Is what exactly does it mean to be advanced low? And the descriptors will say an advanced low speaker of Arabic, let's say, can, and then a list of activities that the student can do and so forth. So again, I'll just quickly, sorry, this is driving you crazy going back and forth. Oh, actually, that's not pretty, is it? What I see here. I have them here, and I'll make sure that when we post these, that link at the moment is not doing what I'd like it to do, but the link here will be able to take you to the can-do statements. ACTFL has now released not only this very comprehensive list for every level of speaking. These are generic standards. That's my one huge complaint is, so what is appropriate even at the novice level in French, for example, may not be the same kind of exchange that's done in Russian. So while the can do might say can greet, right? We're okay there. But as soon as we get can greet with appropriate cultural reference, correct use of grammar and so forth, all of those, we need a little bit more in terms of descriptors because, for example, in Russian, you would, or as it would be in French, rarely would you greet someone you don't know in the familiar form. Whereas in some of our other languages, especially some more Pacific Island languages, that's the norm, actually, to do so. The can-dos probably need some tweaking there. And as I mentioned, Afro is now working on a set of can-do culture guidelines, which are not working on them. They've been released in their beta form. Next, you probably know already that the standards for, which originally were just simply called standards for world languages, are now called the World Readiness Standards. As of 2015, the generic version is out. You can get that as well. I'll see if the link is behaving here. We'll just check and see. Yes, that one does seem to be going. No, that one's not working either on my screen. Don't know why on the screen it's not, but again, I'll make sure those are live. The World Readiness Standards are available in generic form, and each of the world languages that's participated in the project is posting language-specific guidelines for the standards beginning this actual conference next weekend, this coming weekend, I should say. Yes, this coming weekend. So Russian, Urdu, and I think a third one that's slipping my mind. I think it's a commonly taught. I'm going to say it's French, in fact. I think there's one commonly and two less commonly taught that are going to be released at the conference and so forth. So we have and this is the tip of the iceberg, guys. In terms of standards for foreign languages, we can look at the existing culture standards. We can look at, they're actually from the ILR, the Interagency Language Roundtable, a whole separate set of culture guidelines and cultural appropriacy recommendations. So there's tons of things out there that you as instructors can choose to say, what is it from all of these that I want to be the standards on which I'm going to be looking at my students' performance? Hopefully you're kind of seeing where I'm going with this, by the way. This is moving this away, as I know most of us have been already, but really putting a big exclamation point on this contention that we move away from assessment that's entirely based on pen and paper or even online discrete answer tests, that we're only looking at what's the genitive case of stole, what's the imperative form of this verb, and so, but really looking at language in context and all. So my controversial part to this presentation, there we go, is the notion that one of, if not the best way of getting these kinds of building into a courseware, meaning what we do in our class is not simply the software hardware that we use to run it, but what we do in the class takes a particular type of classroom experience. And it's the kind of classroom experience, again, that I'm hoping most of you are already doing, but that's one where we don't, as instructors, spend 45 of the 50 minutes of class time we may have, or 70 of the 75 minutes explaining grammar, going over vocabulary. I know our Arabic program pioneered this idea of not simply flipping the classroom in terms of amount of time spent in class versus out of class, but what is done in that time out of class. So what am I talking about here? So out of class, and yes, here I always got lots of, sometimes I did this at the University of Chicago, strangely, which has quite a robust set of language courses in their program, and literally got audible gasps when this slide went up and people said, what? What? Grammar presentation out of class. That can be done online, that can be done from an old school textbook. Introducing new lexicon, and ideally introducing it doesn't simply mean a list of words and a list of definitions, but how the word is used, context, examples of use, and so forth. Obviously, what we've always done, homework that can include listening exercises, viewing exercises, practice in writing, and our standard kind of rote practicing form homework. Portfolio activities, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, and home reading that's actually done by the student's choice, picking the type of text, the type of reading genre by himself, herself, and doing that outside of class with also some guidance that will work its way into our portfolio activity. What that this setup does for in-class ed is changes how we spend our time with our students face-to-face. That time now is active practice of the new material. Rather than spending so much time introducing it, we can now work it. Work the new material, practice the new grammatical forms in context, really work with pairs, work with groups, work with large numbers, small numbers. Recycled old material from previous classes, bringing it, spiraling it in. Precisely the kind of manipulation of material that actually online is not as well suited for, of knowing the history of the class and saying, right, day before yesterday you were having trouble with this particular tense, so today you're not even going to know that's the focus of the lesson, because it's not. We're looking at travel monologues, but I'm going to work the past tense into it as we practice it, just so you don't forget those forms we worked on. Use of lots and lots and lots of realia, stuff that comes from the country, tickets, venues, artifacts, things that you can use to bring that feel of the country into the classroom, and lots of culture, of media, visual, audio, textual, to bring in a mixture of these, to bring in the cultural focus of production. And as I said, pair work, group work, 3s, 4s, mix it up, mix it up, mix it up, including recitation work. That I know sounds really old school, and it is. The idea that you might go back and just say that one word that everyone keeps doing for us in Russian. It's always that bloody soft L, or sh, and practicing again. I keep hearing everyone say хорошо, хорошо, and you keep going хорошо, хорошо. Everyone together until you can hear, you'll hear the clinker, you'll hear the ringer, even in that kind of group recitation. So you really can mix it up. What does it look like? Let's play a little bit now. This is the part I like to do. So an example of the kind of work that would be based on, so I've now, let's say, I'm in my semester, in fact, in the very beginning of my semester. And I've now planned my Russian class based on the idea that in this 2 semesters of 15 weeks, it's an intensive class, so 6 hours a week, 15 weeks of class, 2 semesters. I want my students to get to a level of intermediate mid in speaking and intermediate high by the end of that term in listening. So a lot of my activities from the very beginning are going to be from week 1, not graded listening passages. I don't do the, lets me find a little piece of short Russian that they'll be able to understand in the first week. I want them to know that the stuff is going to wash over them for probably the first semester, 2, 3, 4, until they start pulling bits and pieces out and building on more and more and more understanding. So right away, we use as much in backward design, we want to build on where we've got adult learners, so let's build on what these adults know from their first language and first world experience, right? So all I'll tell them, this is day 2 of Russian. The first day was spent kind of the usual getting to know each other. We've done a little bit with the alphabet, even just to get their feet into the water. And I say, okay, we're going to play this. This is in English, the text that is, weather forecast from Russia, in Russian. So they're going, what? That's right. So they know now. This is not a sports report. This is not a date movie. It's a weather report. So right away, go for it, please.
I have a silly question.
Yes.
So from what I understood, you basically just throw stuff that they will not understand fully, but just kind of...
And go and focus in on what do they know. What do they know? And I'll show you, I'm going to give you an example here going from 0, novice level.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll kick it up to say what I could do with the same text in the second semester. But this is like day 2, day 3. So they really do know nothing. So what does? So we're doing this, as I said, contextually, right? Backward design. Backward design says, well, at this level, what is their actful level on day 3 of a Russian or an Arabic or a French or a Ukrainian class? What is it on day 3? 0. Novice. The bottom. There we go. We use almost every way we can, right? We're at the floor, right? Nothing. So what does that mean? What does being a 0 novice mean? What can a student do, an adult student do?
But I guess it depends on the language also, because they may know stuff in French, like j'aime Paris,
Well, and they probably know vodka and Putin, and so they know the ridiculous little, exactly, almost all of them know niet and da. 0. But you're quite right, especially Spanish, right? And you've grown up in Texas, you probably at least know a few food items and things like that. You're absolutely right. So we want to play that level, but it's still zero. What does zero mean? In the Afro guidelines and in our now heads, memorized material. So even in those cases, if you say, je t'aime,
right, but my students
they've learned these as fixed phrases.
My students usually know budbo, which is like, let's drink to it or something.
Right, or worse, in Russian, they've learned the wrong thing. They always learn na zdarovya, and you want to say, no, don't, if you're making a toast, don't do that. So, whatever it is, it's memorized material. It tends to be cognates, yes? Yeah, okay, good, I'm seeing lots of nodding, right? So zero says, our students will know, recognize cognates. They will have fixed phrases that they may know, and very little else to build on. Not much else to build on. So given that it's a weather report, now go the other direction. Our students say, I know nothing except, and I doubt they'll say this, but we know they know nothing. I only know a few memorized phrases at most, and some words that might sound the way they do in English, but I don't know what those are yet. Right? I don't know what I don't know. But they do know what a weather forecast is. So, does this mean that culture A equals culture B? No, of course not. But what do they know? They need to kind of grasp and hold on to. What is a weather forecast? What would you be expecting to see here? Temperatures.
High and low.
High, low.
Cloudy, sunny, rainy.
Clouds, rain, suns. We're in Russia, so probably...
The next 5 days.
Exactly, right? What day of the week, right? On Monday it will, Tuesday, And because it's a forecast, there's a particular tense that lovingly gets used all the time.
Future.
The future, right? There's no point in forecasting yesterday, right? Yesterday was really rainy. Thank you, that's not helping me. The whole point of the forecast is what? And the student knows this. He, she may not have thought about it, but the whole point of us listening to it is to think, well, what do I need to wear tomorrow? Do I need an umbrella? Do I need, what? Okay. So you've got all that. You've also got that this is a television broadcast, and we tell the student this overtly. Remember, use your visual vocabulary. You may not understand 98.9% of the Russian, but you're going to understand a lot of what you see. Not all of it, but a lot of what you see. Okay, that's a long-winded way to get at the phrase. It's all done actually very quickly. The weather forecast, what kind of things do you see? Well, temperatures, types of weather, snow, rain, clear, sunny. Okay, so let's go through it. Use everything you've got. Russian speakers enjoy it. Non-Russian speakers listen. There are cognates in here that are going to give away some of the content, but use the visual vocabulary for the rest of it. Here we go. Here we go.
Не бывает плохой погоды, бывает плохая одежда, тем более осенью. В среду Гидромедцентр рекомендует жителям и гостям столичного региона захватить с собой зонтики. Начиная с первой половины дня в городе ожидается резкое ухудшение погоды. Дожди накроют Москву и с небольшими перерывами будут идти не менее суток. А из-за усиления ветра в столице области объявлено штормовое предупреждение. Ожидаются порывы более 20 метров в секунду. Столбики термометров не поднимутся сегодня выше плюс 5 градусов, что несколько ниже привычной для этого времени температуры.
Moscow.
Well done. And how did you get that? How did you get that it's Moscow? It absolutely is Moscow. How did you get it?
He said it. We heard
You hear the word. And so, did you hear Moscow?
No.
Moscow? No. You hear the Russian Moscow. It's actually Moskva. Moskva, right? But you heard it, and you certainly saw images that hopefully you didn't see the Kremlin, but there were other landmarks of Moscow you may or may not have known. But your brain was dying to hear a city, right? It wants to hear a city, and you latched onto it. Absolutely. So it's in Moscow. There are 5 cognates in this word. 5 cognates. Temperature, temperatura.
I didn't know what that sounds like. It sounds like
Thermometer. And the temperature is plus, right, is above freezing, is above, right? It's Celsius, of course, so 0 plus or minus, right?
I thought I would hear Celsius, but
You did.
I didn't hear it.
You Celsius, it's what you heard, yeah. And the other one then, because wind is measured not in miles per hour, but rather meters per second. So this meter and you heard secunda, secundu, secundu. Yeah, there you go. See, you did hear. I told you did. So there were 5. There were 5. It doesn't give you a whole lot. Now, what I love about it, though, it does give you not only the handful of words that I can now write on the board in Cyrillic, or I can even ask you, even on day 2, you learned some Cyrillic yesterday, can you now take the word secunda and write that in Cyrillic? Start with real basic, simple little steps, right? But they're using already authentic materials. They're hearing, yeah, that's how fast Russian's going to sound when you turn on the television, right? I don't want them, in a sense, I'm maybe a little preachy here, I don't want them learning as I did. Здравствуйте, меня зовут Томас, я ваш преподаватель, а вы мои студенты. No one in Russian, except an American Russian teacher, talks like that. And so no, I want them to hear this, to know, get used to the sound, get used to the speed, but also know that, yeah, they can pull even a little bit of meaning from it, using the picture, using those cognates. So, from that, we can now kind of guess, I could say, using the pictures. Okay, you didn't probably get the day of the week it was, unless you're a speaker of Russian or Ukrainian, right? It's a forecast for, we go here.
Fall.
So good, it happens to be fall. You're absolutely right, because what is the weather going to be like? It's for Wednesday. It says the Wednesday for tomorrow, Wednesday. So the guy says, the weather's going to be, just use your visual vocabulary. Turn it into English. The weather's going to be? Cloudy. Windy.
But no rain.
What comes? Little rain.
Okay.
But, he says, and this you only get if you've got Russian or German. If you've got German, you might have heard the cognate zond, zontik in Russian. You should go ahead and bring your umbrella, he says. Take your umbrella with you, zontik. Okay, so just little bits and pieces. What if your class, though, is not on the first day? So let me kick this up a bit. That we move it to, say, the intermediate mid-level. I would show this, say, at the end of the year-long course. My goals now, having built it backward, would now be, and I would do this with the student at home first. This would be a home task that would say, identify the day of the week being forecast. At this level, you should hear it, Siriadu, on Wednesday. What you need to take with you. You should hear, взять с собой зонтик, take an umbrella with you. What kind of weather will be most of the day, and it is indeed ветрено, сильный ветер, he says, сильный ветер, холодно, и небольшой, actually he says небольшие дожди, little rain, a little bit of rain. And how high the temperature will get. Again, that was a tricky one because he uses this weather metaphor, the thermometer tube, right, will not reach higher than, right? And he gives the temperature in Celsius, plus, right? Summarize the weather report. Okay, that's exactly an intermediate mid-activity. I can summarize what the weather is going to be like tomorrow. Завтра, so tomorrow it will be cold. It may rain a bit. It will definitely be windy, and we should bring our umbrellas with us. And then let's turn it into useful Russian now, or useful language. Act out a short dialogue with your partner about the weather on that day. And so at home, working with a partner either on Canvas, they can do this on Zoom or Skype or whatever, FaceTime, is with a partner. Let's go to a movie tomorrow. Right? Chat, absolutely. Let's go to a movie tomorrow. Sure, but I think it's going to be cold, no? Well, I heard it's not going to be very cold, but it might be rain, so maybe we should take our umbrellas. Sure, sounds good, let's go. Something short that has to do with the weather, right? So, even at the 0 level, we can build with using authentic materials, building backwards, or at the mid-level, or you can easily kick this up to advanced mid-high by making it something about really forecasting the weather. What's the problem with weather forecast? Do they work, do they not work? What's the point of it in Moscow if you're in the middle of November? The weather's probably going to be the same anyway, really. You need to know anything other than when the first snow is going to be. So now you guys give it a try. So here's the viewers. Multi-level proficiency, same thing. I'm going to give you a text, a visual text in English, because we have so many languages here. But anything from 0 plus or higher. So the first time you run through it, just kind of take it in and start thinking for your own classes. If you were turning this into a Turkish text in your mind, What would you do? Where would you put this? Could you say, I could use this early in my class at the 0+, or I might bring this in at intermediate, or I'll wait till the end, but take a listen, see what you think. I love television advertisements. They're short, they're pithy, they're terse, they're always persuasive because they're trying to get you to buy something or do something. They tend to have great conversational language. So this is one from last year. Okay, let's see. Hopefully you'll recognize some.
Meet Tim Mahoney. Tim thinks you need to be some sort of mastermind to do your own taxes. So we flew in mastermind George Smoot to help him.
Okay, what does it say there?
It says, did you buy a home?
Did you buy a home?
Yes.
Then I press there.
Thanks.
Intuit TurboTax. Taxes done smarter.
Okay. Yeah. Since you all kind of giggled or tittered a bit, it means you got the humor. Yay, that's a good thing. Our students, of course, will watch it on no clue, no laugh, no humor, because I only understood, 20 words in it or something. But we ask ourselves, even in choosing the material, we're already thinking backwards, right? So what was the goal of this assignment? Am I going to focus on multi-skills, a little bit of listening, a little bit of the cultural stuff involved, focus maybe on lexicon, if I do it as a home assignment, a home task? What's my goal? So is my focus lexical, grammatical, pragmatics, culture? What is it? What am I trying to bring into? What I want to focus on? And then what does that particular clip, that ad, as it were, offer the learner in terms of authenticity of content? I don't want it to be just a throwaway for my benefit. I'm not interested in the student buying TurboTax or doing his or her income tax. That's not the point. So what would it be for something like that text? Because there's actually a couple of things in the text that are terrific, even at the beginning level, for some easy, simple language lessons. What might you do with it?
Good interaction.
Absolutely. And indeed, what did we get? What was the example we got in that interaction?
Well, one guy's smart and the other guy's stupid.
Yeah, we kind of don't want our students to be judging each other, but you're absolutely right. We can have them judge the guys on the screen, though. And we do get a perfectly good, almost textbook, hi, hey, right, hello, right? The guy introduces himself. The smart guy introduces himself properly. They get this, hi. Right, so we can hopefully not surmise that only stupid people say hi, but they do set themselves up right away culturally as to how they greet each other even. So from the very, very basic beginnings. There's that wonderful dialogue. Who's that? That wonderful, wonderful dialogue, right? What does it say? Did you buy a car? Did you? Yes. Push there. Right? It's terrific, actually. It's almost a textbook script that can be used very, very basic, or at the higher levels, made into something a lot more, turned into a more meaningful exercise. But what's at the base of that? Again, if we look at reverse design, what are we trying to come out with? The outcomes, right? We started with the outcomes. So did the learner make any appropriate, reasonably accurate use of grammatical and lexical material in it? So once they've done the exercise, what is it? Was it the past tense form? Did you buy a car?